Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about the SEC. We got three ranked matchups in the SEC. We got LSU at Vanderbilt. We got Ole Miss at Georgia. We got Alabama inviting Tennessee into town. I'm going to take Alabama. I'll take Georgia. I'll take LSU on the road to get a huge one and kind of make some people rethink what they think about LSU. But we'll obviously talk about that as it unfolds. Let's go and jump into some Week 8 upset alerts. There's a whole lot of them. I got 6 of them here. I think there could probably be 8 to 10 of them. If I'm being totally honest, this is going to be a weird weekend. And frankly, it's probably going to come from one that's not on this list, considering how crazy this year has been. But Louisville goes on the road to number 2, Miami, on Friday night. Tomorrow night, this one's going to be going on. We got another Friday night one right after this. But Miami favored by 13.5 in this football game. Can Miami do this? They're just getting back from their final bye of the season. They did a bye week, Florida State, a bye week, Louisville on a Friday night. I don't know why. That's how it unfolded for their season. They're about to play 7 straight games. This is going to be maybe the toughest one, at least on paper, going forward. We'll see how some of the teams down the road develop, obviously. But Louisville's a very good team, very strong rushing attack with Isaac Brown. The second that guy gets the ball in his hands, it feels like he's 12 yards downfield. I hope he's healthy going forward. They're coming off a bye week, so hopefully he's fully healthy going forward because that guy's an absolute difference maker in these big-time games. The Louisville pass defense has been very good, has been played a game where they've played really, really good football. Now, the question is, have they played a quarterback and an offensive line? Like Miami, I think that's very much up for debate. The Miami offensive line could very well be the very best in the country, and I think it's one of those guys that if you do not get after him, it's going to be a nightmare for you. He's so good with his legs, so good with his eyes. He's a guy that can make every throw on the football field if you don't heat him up. Now, if you heat him up, we saw what happened last year. You could push him off his spot and make him make plays on the run. He's not quite as good at that. He will make a couple of mistakes if you give him those openings. It's going to be really interesting to see if Louisville can get after him just a little bit. You don't necessarily have to get after him 35 pressures like Florida did to Texas earlier in the season. I think you got to find a way to get after him for 10. Get after him, just push him off his spot just a little bit, make him overthink it just a little bit, and then you can get that one big turnover that totally changes this game. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Louisville also forces a number of turnovers. So there's an opening here. There's absolutely an opening if they can find a way to get pressure without committing too many guys to pressure, because then he will just get to his hot and they'll make a play after the catch with Malachi Toney or one of these incredible players on the outside from Miami. So I think this is going to be a very good test. I think this is one of those games for Miami where it really comes down to how mentally tough they are. I think there's a number of moments this season, especially towards the back end of the season, where Miami's going to have to prove they're a different team than they were last year. I think they're a better team. I think there's no doubt about that. I don't know what the intangibles are until you're pushed into a corner. So this is one of those games where they should be able to handle it. On paper, they are the more talented, more physical team. This is one of those moments where you played Syracuse last year. You were the more talented physical team. You lost. You played Georgia Tech. You were the more talented physical team, and you lost. Both those were on the road, though. So I'm going to say this one's a 4 out of 10 for me. I think Miami finds a way to win this one. I think they win it relatively comfortably. But maybe it's one of those games where they're at halftime, it looks a little bit more sketchy, and then Miami's able to pull away. Sticking with Friday night, number 25 Nebraska at Minnesota. Nebraska favored by 8.5 in this game. This one's a huge one. And Minnesota, better football team than they get credit for. I can tell you that. Minnesota's been a little bit up and down, but Drake Lindsey, the redshirt freshman, has kind of found his footing. If that's a guy that's coming back for 2026, you're going to want to watch them very, very closely. But we'll obviously get to that when we get there. Nebraska coming off a game against Maryland where it was far from straightforward, but they found a way to win that football game late, did enough in that game, and Dylan Raiola, despite a couple of mistakes, is playing really good football. I understand people have their enough to say about Dylan Raiola going forward. I understand that people have their criticism. I have mine as well. But when you talk about just playing the position of quarterback, he plays it really, really efficiently. Has his feet where they need to be, makes really, really confident throws. Now, we'll make a couple of mistakes. There's no doubt about that. Needs to get better about that. But the guy's done really, really well. Nebraska's been really good against the pass for the most part of the season. Let's see if Drake Lindsey can find a couple of openings. I think Nebraska finds a way to win this one. I do think Minnesota's offense is able to make it a little bit interesting early in this game, but I think Nebraska has enough. I think Dylan Raiola plays good football, and I think all the Matt Rule attention to Penn State Whether real or not, I tend to believe it's pretty real. We'll see what happens there. But at the end of the day, I think Nebraska gets a win amid all the craziness. I'll put a 5 out of 10 on this one. I think Minnesota has a shot, but I think Nebraska's physical enough in the pass defense to get a win. Number 14, Oklahoma on the road at South Carolina. Oklahoma favored but only by 5.5 here. This one's interesting. Does anyone really know how good Oklahoma is? Because I'm not sure if I do. I do think they're a good team. The question is, how good is that offense? I think they're missing quite a bit on that offensive side of the ball, especially if John Mateer is not 100%. Are you getting enough from that run offense without his ability? Are you getting enough in the pass offense without him feeling fully confident gripping the football the way he probably really has to with a couple of things he does? So at the end of the day, it's going to be really interesting to see what this Oklahoma team is. They got to be able to respond after a tough loss to Texas. If there's any pass rush in the SEC that rivals Texas, it's South Carolina. They can get after you on both edges. They can bring guys in pressure from the DB position, from the linebacker spot. It's going to be really tough for John Mateer not to be pushed off the spot, not have to make a couple of plays off schedule in this game. I tend to believe they're dealing with a little bit easier of an offense to handle in the grand scheme of things, although the Texas offense didn't look too hard to handle going into that game. I think there's an opening here where South Carolina's offense just kind of keeps them in it in a lot of different ways. They don't make enough plays, and Lenore Sellers isn't fully healthy yet, it doesn't feel like. So I think it's going to be one of those moments where Oklahoma doesn't play pretty football. They definitely leave this game up for chance late in this football game, but John Mateer makes enough plays. I think the South Carolina defense just doesn't do enough. I think it's one of those 2010 type games like South Carolina just had against LSU. I think the South Carolina crowd is going to be very, very active, though. So I'm going to say 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10. I think this is a very tough spot for Oklahoma. I think they find a way to get it done, but if South Carolina gets a relatively healthy Lenore Sellers, everything is on the table for that team. Number 7, Texas Tech on the road at Arizona State. Texas Tech favored by 7.5 in this game. This one's huge. Another marquee matchup in the Big 12. Arizona State needs this one, plain and simple. I think this conference is going to get way, way too crowded at the top for them not to fall to 2 losses and then find a way to get back into it. So you got to find a way to win this one. As crazy as that sounds, Sam Levitt's got to come back into this game coming off an injury. It sounds like he's going to be ready to roll in this one. He's got to play really good football. And if he doesn't, they're going to be left behind. The big thing here is you cannot rely on the run. Arizona State's done that quite a bit this year, even against Mississippi State when they lost that football game. The way they came back into it was Kyson Brown, was that run game getting them going. Relief Brown, elite players that absolutely can make some big-time plays in this game. Can your offensive line handle the Texas Tech defensive line? I feel like we can talk about everything with Texas Tech. We can talk about Baron Morton being questionable and maybe Will Hammond going in this game. We can talk about the run game with Cameron Dickey and all of those incredible players. It comes down to, can you block their defensive line? If you can't, you're not going to win the football game. If you can, at least for a little bit, you might have a chance to win the football game. That's kind of the cut and dry for Texas Tech. That's why Utah was in that game. They were able to at least neutralize that group for a little bit. Arizona State doesn't have 2 top 15 picks to tackle. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. It's going to be a fight back and forth. I think Texas Tech wins this one. I think regardless of the quarterback, they find a way to get this one done. I think Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham with their back up against the wall is a scary thing, though. So I'll put a 7 out of 10 on this one. I think this one gets really intense late into this game. I think they fight down the stretch, but I think Texas Tech's defensive front is too much. I think Arizona State is not going to have the ability to go deep in their bag offensively the way that they might need to. I think Texas Tech wins this one, but a little bit of fight from the Sun Devils for sure. Number 4, Texas A&M on the road at Arkansas. This one is not in Dallas, which is a massive win for college football. But Texas A&M coming off a win over Florida. Now it's on the road to take on Bobby Petrino. He beat you last time when you played and he was a head coach of Arkansas. This is going to be a really, really fun one. There's no doubt about that. The biggest thing here is the A&M defense feels like they figured something out. They feel like they're playing at a top level. I mean, they definitely are on 3rd and 4th down. I believe they've only given up 2 of 33 third downs in SEC play thus far. They've been elite. There's no doubt about that. This is a different offense. This is not a limited offense by any means, where you could make the argument for Florida being a limited offense with the play caller that they have, with all due respect. You could make the argument Mississippi State being limited just because of the physicality advantage that A&M had. I think you could make the same argument. Why am I blanking on the other team that they played? I apologize. I will get there at some point. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a very, very tough offense to fully slow down. So the question is, How quickly can Arkansas get going? Can they get going really efficiently? Can Taylon Green get going with Cassius Howell on the edge, breathing down his neck, because he's going to be breathing down his neck. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this game. I think it's a confirmation game for A&M, as best I can put it. I think A&M has won all the games that they've played. They've played good football in all of the games that they've played thus far. This is going to be a tougher challenge defensively. It's all about just confirming what my eyes have seen the first couple of weeks, confirming what I believe to be true, which is A&M's a good team with a really good pass rush and a mean defense. Can they confirm that this Saturday, the same way the team that they beat, Notre Dame, confirmed that earlier this year? So I think it's going to be a really fun one. I think A&M wins it. I think it's kind of going to be a shootout. I think the A&M team is a good defense. I think it's far from a great defense, and I think Arkansas does a great job at finding a couple of openings against defenses. So I think A&M will do enough. I think they'll win this game, but I'm going to put it 7 out of 10 on the upset alert. I think Arkansas has the offense to stick around in this game, but I'm not picking against Cassius Howell right now. So I'll take A&M to win it, but I think Arkansas has a very good shot to knock them off in this game. And then Mississippi State at Florida. I don't know if this would be looked at as an upset, but Florida's favored by about 10 points in this game. 9.5, over under at 51.5. I think Florida's done. I think there's a lot of times where I've been able to say that over the last couple of years, and they haven't been done. With all credit to those players, they have fought every step of the way for Billy Napier. They've done an incredible job for that coach and done just about everything to keep him around. Here's the reality. They see it all. They understand that on Sunday he might get fired one way or the other. They could win by 51 points, and he very well might be fired on Sunday. It's hard to go out there and fight the same way when you know that's the case. When you know that's probably what's going to be happening. Now, these players probably know more than we do, so it's very well that maybe this isn't happening behind the scenes as much as it being talked about. I tend to believe it is. I tend to believe a lot of things are happening behind the scenes at Florida. I tend to believe these players at least know that something is happening. I think it's going to be tough to get up for this one. Now, this is a very mentally tough team. I want to make that very clear. Billy Napier's done a really good job of keeping this team fully engaged throughout a very tough time to keep them fully engaged. But the reality is, I have a hard time believing that locker room is fully ready for this matchup, at least from a mental perspective. I think it's going to be really tough to win it regardless of if they're ready or not. I think Mississippi State just wins the football game. I think Florida is a very good football team. I think they have the ability to be one of those teams that creates problems for everyone, but I think the ship has sailed. I think there were a number of moments this season and last season where they could have taken the chance and really become the football team that they're capable of being. They've fallen flat every single time. So I think Jeff Lebby finds enough openings in that Florida defense that has been very good. I think Billy Napier will not be the coach of Florida the next time that we talk. I think Florida will end up losing this game. I think the decision will be very easy for Scott Strickland. Will Scott Strickland make the next hire is something that we can talk about later, but at the end of the day, I think this is an uphill battle mentally for Florida, and I think Mississippi State's coming in hungry after a bye. So I'll take Mississippi State to win it. I'm 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 on the upset meter. I think it's going to be really tough for Florida to get up for this one. If they do, all respect to those players and Billy Napier, but I think it's going to be tough with everything mounting around that program. It's a really fun weekend. One that I didn't even talk about is Texas goes on the road to Kentucky this weekend. If you know anything about Lexington, Kentucky, there is something that happens there once a year. I don't know what it is, and they don't always get a win in those spots. They find a way to get a win a couple of times. That Georgia game a year ago, they lost that one 13-12. It is going to be an interesting game. I think Texas finds a way to win. I can't promise it's going to look all that pretty. I think that's going to be a fight in Lexington, and that's going to be a really fun one. Didn't include on here, but at the end of the day, I think it absolutely could be an upset that we see this week. But let's take our last break. When we come back, we got some best bets, and I like way too many underdogs this week. But at the end of the day, I'm going to roll with it. Feel pretty confident with how crazy this year has been. But let's get into my best bets right after this, so stick with us.